Greetings, it is I, Tantus Van Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my expose on the history of Magic the Gathering, where I go set by set, release by release, and let you know information about it, information about the set, and the history of everything Magic Wizards has released. So today I have for you Planar Chaos. Now this is the second expansion in the Time Spiral block and was released on February 2nd of 2007. It had 165 cards to it. Now of course it had the themes of time-shifted, split cards, rebels, slivers, thalids, and spell shapers. It had the keywords of echo, flanking, flash, kicker, madness, morph, split second, suspend, and vanishing. Now there were 45 cards in here which were considered time-shifted, which I'll explain a little bit later on, but it continued the themes of the previous set, dealing with time matters. But this time we were looking at alternate timelines. Timelines where things had changed in the past to alter the future. The symbol actually represented two planar timelines overlapping. Interesting to note here though, there were no artifacts in this entire set. So as I said, the time-shifted were still here, but they were formed much more unique. These time-shifted cards were not technical reprints of previous cards that had been out. These time-shifted cards effectively were reprints in a way, but they changed the color. They were all color shifted. A few of them did have a few keywords here and there changed around, just to change it around enough so that it was a new version of the card, rather than sometimes it wouldn't make sense for the shift in color to match with some of the abilities and the wording on it. The shift around in the way that it worked, dealing with the new color that made it make sense, is what also shifted around. It is known that the coloring around the border itself of the card was slightly altered in all of these time-shifted cards, but it is also very important to note that the symbol here, the symbols matched whatever kind of rarity it would be. The symbols were normal. They weren't a different color or different form of symbol like they had been in Time Spiral. Now it was released in 15 card boosters, 4 pre-constructed decks, and a fat pack, of course. It is also important to note that the pre-constructed decks and the Fat Pack had Pro Tour cards in. The pre-release was on January 20th, 2007, and it was given out as a pre-release card, a foil alternate art Orthos the Avenger. The release card was a Henge Troll. There was a novel of the same name that did accompany this set. Each of these packs contained 8 normal commons, 3 color time-shifted commons, 2 normal uncommons, 1 normal rare, and then 1 card that was either a time-shifted uncommon or time-shifted rare. Our story has us return to Dominaria, where the time storms are getting worse and worse. Things are falling apart. Alternate timelines are overlaying on top of normal timelines. It's no longer just past and present meeting up. Now we're getting alternate realities, ones in which small decisions create great changes to certain characters. Teferi has now lost his planeswalking spark, but he continues to try to overcome the problems here and face off against the rifts. He's managed to seal 1, but there are still more to go. He joins with Joyra and Venser as they then begin to journey towards Urborg, where apparently the greatest of rifts are, in hopes to finally solving it and saving all of Dominaria. Nay, the entire multiverse. So of course in this set, we had the return from Time Spiral of Flash, Split Second, and Suspend. From previous sets, we had the return of Echo, Flanking, Kicker, Madness, and Morph. We did see some changes though. We saw for Echo, the first time that we saw an Echo cost that did not match the mana of the original casting cost. We also saw that we were introduced to a new type of split card, single color split cards. Before, the split cards had either been 2 different colors or multicolor. Now it was the same color in a same split card. We also saw the introduction of a new keyword, vanishing, which was in fact an evolution of fading from before, but it was built in such a way to match with the themes of suspend, because basically time counters were placed upon this creature, and once the last time counter was removed, it would be sacrificed. So effectively, we did change the mechanics and evolve what fading was originally into a new type of word, vanishing. Now the set had 10 cycles and 3 vertical cycles. First were alternate legends. These took legends of Magic's past and created alternate versions of them based on alternate timelines. So they did have similarities and connections to these past legends, only alternate abilities based upon this alternate timeline for them. There was also a cycle of charms, module instants that of course you could choose from a number of different abilities on them, as most charms tend to be. There was also a cycle of color-shifted reprints. These were past cards which new color-shifted versions of them were being printed. These were straight up just color-shifted versions of cards. There was a cycle of common slivers, monocolored, that granted your slivers an ability that normally that color would not grant. So basically the abilities were shifted over. There was also enemy color slivers. There was a cycle of slivers that had 2 colors that were enemy colors, and their ability basically matched previous enemy color multicolored spells that existed. There was a cycle of legendary dragons. These were similar to the legendary dragons within Invasion, except rather than being faced around one color and having the allied colors, it's faced around one color and having the 2 enemy colors. And then you would pay basically the color that was the center color plus 2 mana when it would damage an opponent for an effect. You could pay 3, 2 colorless, 1 of the center color, have this effect when it damaged an opponent. And it was a 6/6 flyer. There were the Magi, human wizards that each of them had an ability that, well, mimicked a non-basic land. One of Magic's past that was quite famous. There were Spell Shapers, each one basically having an ability that matched an instance or sorcery of Magic's past. There were X suspend cards. These were suspend cards that you would basically pay X when it came to suspending them, and they would be suspended for X turns. Each time a counter was removed from it, a time counter, an effect would occur. There was also a cycle of uncommon vanishing creatures. Now, it is very important to note that there was a lot of color shifting when it came to abilities. Effectively, if you would have an ability more than likely linked to certain colors, for example, flying to things like blue, it would shift to another color that you wouldn't see flying normally, like a lot more flying within green. That they shifted these colors around just to make things more interesting with the idealism of basically alternate timelines that maybe you're in a timeline where green mana, hey, it was linked to flying. Now for the vertical cycles, though, there were 3. The extortion cycle, black spells that allowed another player to basically pay a cost in order to counter the spell's effects, each of them being quite powerful, so it tempted those other players to basically pay this cost in order to prevent you from getting something. There was the white bounce. They're white creatures that had flash, that when they entered the battlefield, you'd return another creature you control to its owner's hand. And then, of course, there was the red split cards. As I said, they're specifically split cards, but both splits, both spells, are red. They just have 2 different effects. Usually one's much cheaper than the other, so depending on how much mana you have, you might pay for the smaller effect or the much larger effect. Within the set, rather than basically you had the time-shifted cards, which were color-shifted versions of Private's cards, many of them also had allusions to past cards of Magic. For example, the creature enchantment Oromancer's Guide referred to Rabid Wombat. Basically, it gave the Rabid Wombat ability to whatever creature you enchanted. Now, the theme decks that were released as part of this set were a white-red called Endless March, a blue deck called Ixidor's Legacy, a white-black-green called Ritual's Rebirth, and a black-red called Unraveling Mind. Now let's talk about some of the cards from this set. So there was Aeon Chronicler. So this is one of the suspend X cards. You of course could suspend it for X turns for a mana cost of X, 3 colorless and 1 blue. Now it had a power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand. Whenever you would remove a time counter from it while it is suspended, you draw a card. You suspend it for a period of time, start drawing cards into your hand, and then you play it for being very big. There's Damnation, which was the color-shifted Wrath of God. It was a black spell that destroyed all creatures. They cannot be regenerated. There was Detravor. This was another X-suspend creature. You, of course, suspend it for X, 3 colors, 1 red, When you would remove a time counter from it while it is still suspended, you destroy target non-basic land. When it comes into play, it has power and toughness equal to the number of non-basic lands in all of your opponent's graveyards. So you destroy a bunch of non-basic lands and get a big creature afterwards. Extirpate. It has split second. Choose target card in a graveyard other than a non-basic land. You then search that owner's library in hand for copies of that card, same name as that card, and exile them. Shuffle a library afterwards. So if there's a card in a graveyard and you just want to get rid of all of them, extirpate. There's Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. All lands are swamps in addition to their other types. It just makes everything also a swamp, meaning my lands can do everything they used to be able to do, but now they're a swamp that can also tap for a black mana, beyond all the normal abilities they used to just have. Urborg makes everything swamp. Akroma, Angel of Fury, the alternate version of Akroma. It cannot be countered. It has flying, trample, and protection from blue and white. For 1 red mana, you can give it +1/+0 until end of turn. It's got a fire breathing. And it also has a morph. For 3 colorless, 3 red. Blight Spreader. Tap. Target player loses 1 life. You could also 4 tap. Search your library for a rebel with a converted mana cost of 3 or less. Put it onto the battlefield and then shuffle your library afterwards. So a black, life-losing Rebel Searcher. There was Blood Knight. This was the time-shifted White Knight. First strike, protection from white. Braids, Conjurer Adept, a blue version of Braids. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, they may put an artifact, creature, or land from their hand into play onto the battlefield. There was Krovax, Ascendant Hero. Other white creatures get +1/+1. Non-white creatures get -1/-1. And you can pay 2 life to return Krovax to your hand. So it was the time-shifted version of Krovax, the Evankar version of him, that did a lot of good. That was very powerful back in the day, and this is the white version of him. Darkheart Sliver. All slivers gain, sacrifice this permanent, gain 3 life. Basically, it was like the Dark Heart of the Woods, except sacrificing forests. You sacrifice slivers. Enslave. Gain control of target creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, that creature's owner takes 1 damage. So not only do you steal a creature, you slowly pink away at the life of the person you stole it from. Dichotomy. You can suspend it for 3 for a colorless and 2 blue. For each tapped non-land permanent target opponent controls, you may search that opponent's library for a card with the same name as that permanent and then put it into play under your control. Your opponent taps a bunch of things, non-land things, and then you go look in their deck, steal copies of them, put them into play under your turn. You can pay the expensive cost or suspend it for a bit. Essence Warden. When another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Doesn't say under your control, it's basically like Soul Warden, except green. Gaia's Anthem. Creatures you control get +1/+1. It's a green, glorious anthem. Heroes Remembered. You gain 20 life. Or, you can suspend it for 10 turns for 1 life white mana. Life and Limb. All forests and saplings are 1/1 green sapling creatures and forests. They have both those types. So now all your saplings, they're made into 1/1s if they weren't, but they're also forests. And all your forests are now also saplings. Makes them both lots of creatures, lots of mana, especially in a deck where you can create many saplings. Magnus of the Coffer. For 2 colorless, 1 black, you can tap it and add to your mana pool 1 black mana for each swamp you control. It's Cabal Coffers in creature form. Magnus of the Tabernacle. This is the creature version of Tabernacle at the Penumbra Vale. All creatures have, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this creature unless you pay 1 colorless mana. Mesa Enchantress. Whenever you play an enchantment, you may draw a card. Enchantment spell, to be note exactly. Miri the Cursed. Basically the alternate version of Miri the Catfolk. Flying, first strike, haste. When it deals combat damage to a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Miri the Cursed. So she hits things, gets bigger right away. And she has first strike, which means that she's pretty mean. Necrotic Sliver. All slivers have 3 sacrifices permanent. Destroy target permanent. You can just get rid of slivers to destroy things. Ponify. Destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. Its controller gets a 3/3 green ape creature token into play. You kill something a lot bigger and just make it a 3/3 green ape instead. Prodigal Pyromancer. The color-shifted Prodigal Sorcerer. Tap. Deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Psychotrope Thallid. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a spore counter on Psychotrope Thallid. Remove 3 spore counters from it to put a 1/1 green sapling creature token into play. For 1 mana and sacrificing a sapling, I may draw a card. So in a sapling deck, I can just get rid of a bunch of them to draw cards. Salt Blast. Destroy target non-white permanent. Shivan Meteor. Deal 13 damage to target creature. You can suspend it for 2 turns at the cost of 1 colorless, 2 red. Temporal Extortion. My favorite of the extortion cards. When you cast it, any player may pay half of their life, rounded up, in order to counter Temporal Extortion. If no one does, you take an extra turn. 4 black mana. Extra turn. It's just that someone can pay half their life, rounded up. Wild Pear. Another one I really like. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, you may search your library for a creature that has the same total power and toughness. That means power and toughness added together, and then put it onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. So if I play a 1/5 creature, I can search my library for another creature that has a total power and toughness added together that equals 6. A 3/3, a 4/2, whatever. Also put it onto the battlefield, shuffle my library afterwards. I like Wild Pear a lot. But that's it for today. I introduce you to Planar Chaos. It truly was chaos. We evolved many of the aspects that the previous set had done, but we also evolved the time-shifted. We now had a new version of the time-shifted that were reprints, but different colors, a different essence to the same thing. We also saw alternate versions of Legends of Past. We saw this almost return to many things, many elements of the past once again, but changed in such a way to make it unique and interesting. Planar Chaos took that theme of the past, brought it to the front in such an interesting way. New versions of Echo and Split cards, a new keyword based upon an old one, fading, replaced now by vanishing. And of course, as I said, we had this evolution of abilities. Suspend now had X cards to them. We changed things, but only enough to make it fit within this time theme and be better in a way. And many of the cards here are great ones. Many of them either reference really good cards of the past or are time-shifted versions of very good cards from the past. So you can see how this set had power and greatness to it, because it took important lessons, and it didn't necessarily reprint them right away. It did its own version of them, and brought them to the front for you to play with. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please just leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. There's some great rewards there. It helps to grow and improve both the channel and the empire. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.